Hi again. Okay, so I let my starter rise for a couple hours. It's now almost 5 o'clock. So I'm just gonna show you guys what it looks like to start putting my bread together after I got a rise. So it was in the morning when I fed my starter, and then now it's like in the evening. Sometimes I'll even wait until at night. I think for your first loaf, I'd recommend making it in the morning because you're gonna have to do a bulk fermentation for like 10 to 12 hours. And a lot of people like to do this overnight. However, when you're learning how your starter works and you're learning how the heat in your house works, your bread could be ready sooner than you think. I kind of know my kitchen, know my starter. So I know if I make a loaf of bread right now, that by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, it'll be ready to bake. So let me show you what my starter looks like. So here's Glenn. As you can see, he rose just as much as I wanted him to. He actually rose a little more. He's actually starting to sink a little bit, but he's ready. You can also see, if you look inside, all those bubbles, and see how it's breaking apart right now, for like that. That means he's ready. He's ready to bake. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna throw together this loaf of bread. Okay, so let's get started. So I again am using my my cookbook here, the Artisan Sourdough, and I'm making the everyday sourdough bread. So this is going to be your easiest loaf. It's a great starter loaf. I would recommend getting comfortable with this loaf, being able to make it to where you're happy with it, and then moving on to some of the more advanced recipes in the book. There's tons of stuff in here, but we're gonna be learning with the everyday sourdough. So this is the easiest recipe because it takes only 3 ingredients. Well, technically 4, but it's flour, starter, water, and salt. So I have here, when you're getting started and make your bread, I have here my scale. This is an electronic scale. I do recommend the electronic just because it's going to give you precise numbers. This one is in ounces and grams, so you're going to want it on grams. Her recipe book does have like the cup measurements too, but like I told you in the last video, I think the gram measurements are a lot more accurate, and my bread just turns out better with them. So the first thing you're gonna do is I have a stand mixer. You don't need a stand mixer to make your bread, but it just makes it a lot faster. I also have one of these sourdough mixers. You can get them on Amazon with your starter pack. Super cheap, but it just helps aerate the starter with the water, and I'll show you what I mean. So usually I take my bowl for my mixer and I place it on my scale, and then I set my scale to 0. I zero it out, and then I put my starter in. So I honestly, you can just use a scooper, but what I do is I just dump it in. So this recipe calls for 50 grams of starter. So I just dump Glenn in. He's very happy, ready to make some bread. And then when it's at 50, I call it good. So that was like a little over 50, so I'll use like a little scooper to get them out. Okay, so then now that I have my starter in there, I'm going to add the water. I use warm water. Usually I will turn the hot water on, and that seems to be warm enough. So this is our water. I already measured out our water. We needed 350 grams. So I measured that out already. So I'm just gonna dump it in. And then I use my sourdough mixer, and I mix it up. So if you can see as I'm mixing, like there's bubbles getting in there. Again, you can use a fork. You don't have to have a special mixer. I just think it works well. So use what works for you. Okay, so then when that's all good, I set that aside. And then I get out a glass bowl. Doesn't have to be glass, it's just a bowl. I zero out my scale again and I measure the flour. So this flour that I have put together, this is a mixture. I use whole wheat berries and I make my own flour. That's a little extra, so you don't need to do that. You can find high protein flour. You can find bread flour. Honestly, any flour that works. You can even use the flour I recommended to feed your starter. You don't have to get different flour. King Arthur makes a great flour. Yeah, so this recipe just calls for 500 grams of bread flour. So I already measured this out too, but I'm just double checking. So that's 500 grams. So then it calls for 9 grams of salt. So, or 1.5 teaspoons. You can do this a number of ways. You can just measure out the teaspoons. It's probably one of the easiest. I honestly just wing it. I pay attention to my scale, but I'm not sure it can measure all these little things. But I put the salt on there like this. And then, so I do that separate. I mix the flour and the salt separate. And then this is my wet ingredients. So when I'm ready, I come over to my stand mixer over here, which again, you don't have to have a stand mixer. You can use any type of mixer. You can use a hand mixer. You can just use your hands. Whatever works for you. I'm blessed to have one, so I use it. And then what I do is I turn it on. Sorry if it's loud. And I just add a little flour at a time so that it can get incorporated. So while that's mixing, I just kind of leave it on mixing, and then I feed my starter again. So I need, like I said earlier, I just use like 1/4 cup, and I just dump it in there, and then I get some water. Get some water and a fork, and I mix her up. So now I'm not going to use my starter for the next couple days. I know that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop it in the fridge. So I have a lid. I just put the lid right on my starter. I don't even mark where it's at because I'm not going to use it. This is putting it in the fridge. It's making it go into its dormant process. What that means is it's just getting cozy. It's just cozying up, relaxing. When you do this, you can leave it up to a week. My starter is fine after a week of leaving it in the fridge. It really is. You probably don't want to leave it longer than that though, because the more you feed it and the more you use it, the faster it is active, and the more it works for you, and the faster a rise will happen. So yeah, so I just put the lid on and put it in the fridge, and then next time I'm ready to use it again, I will take it out of the fridge, and I won't feed her anything. I'll take the lid off. I always take the lid off, and I just put it on top like this. So then there's some air getting in, but it won't dry out. If you have no lid, it'll get dry. Like you can see, this is like getting dry here. But yeah, you just put the lid on like this, and then you let it become room temperature. And then if it rises, sometimes it will rise, without you feeding it, then use it. Or you can use it for discard, and then you feed it. So, let's go check on our dough. So this is probably good. It's probably what you want it to look like. Mine's gonna look a little different because if you don't have a stand mixer, because it's just gonna become doughy faster. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna let it rest. I'm gonna let it rest for like 15 to 30 minutes. And then I'm gonna come back in, I'm gonna put it in a different bowl. And I'll tell you why then. Okay, so now that the dough has sat for a few minutes, I'm just gonna transfer it to a different bowl. The reason I do this is because I have noticed that my aluminum bowl, it keeps the bread really cold, and the bread wants to be warm, so it's not gonna rise as fast if I keep it in this. So I've just found that if I transfer it to a glass bowl, it's just a lot happier and it rises faster. So now I'm just gonna do a couple stretch and folds, which is where you stretch the dough out and fold it over. And you kind of go in like a circle, stretch it out, fold it over. This is gonna add bubbles to the dough, help it rise. It's strengthening the dough. So stretch it out, fold it over. So you can do this as many times as you want. You're just trying to get the dough to be a little tighter. And then when you finish stretching and folding, sometimes you can do a stretch and fold like this too, where you pick it up in the middle and then you fold it over like that. I usually end with that. This dough is really sticky, so it's probably gonna rise really fast. So that's what I do. So now, you can, sometimes I cover it with a tea towel, and, today we're going to cover it with, I like to do saran plastic wrap too. Whatever you want to do. I'm just going to cover it with plastic wrap, and then I'm going to let it sit overnight, and tomorrow morning we're going to check it out and see if it's ready to bake. You can do some stretch and folds through over the course of the next 4 hours if you want, but you don't have to. If you just let it sit, it will do its thing. So that's that. Good morning. Hi. Okay, so my bread has sat overnight. It's actually like 10 a.m. So I actually had it sit for a long time. So this is what it looks like. So clearly it has doubled in size. It was like a little pebble in the bottom. You can see the bubbles. That's great. That means it's happy, it's growing. And then it's reached the top. It probably honestly has over-rised, and you can see that it's kind of falling a little bit. That's because I waited like a little longer. So if I would have got up like a little earlier, it probably wouldn't have done that. So my next step is I'm gonna take it out of the bowl here, very carefully, take this plastic wrap off. You can put like oil or flour on the plastic wrap if you don't want it to stick like this. I didn't do that yesterday, but sometimes it doesn't even reach the plastic wrap. It just depends on how long you leave it to sit. So then what I'm going to do is just show you my workspace here, is I'm gonna take a little flour, if I can reach it, take a little flour and dust the thing, dust my hands, and I'm gonna take the dough out of the bowl. So I'm gonna scrape the bottom and have it fall out just like this. Okay, so then I'm gonna do a series of stretch and folds. This is just gonna get the dough to kind of come together. I'm just gonna stretch it and fold it over, stretch it and fold it over. It's just helping the dough. And then I'm gonna round it up like this just like this, and make it into this nice, beautiful round loaf. You're gonna bring it towards you and tuck under, just like I'm showing. And then it's nice and round. I'm gonna take more flour. I'm gonna drizzle it over. And then I have my baton bowl. I'm going to fill that with flour as well. I don't want my dough sticking to the baton bowl. So then I'm gonna take my dough and I'm gonna flip it so the right side is facing down. I'm gonna pinch together the dough just like this. So you can see it's kind of pulling apart. I'm gonna pinch those parts together. I'm not even sure what this part does, but I do it every time. So just like that, that's what you're gonna look like. And then we're gonna do a short fermentation. So we just did a long fermentation. This is gonna be a short fermentation. In her book, she recommends 30 minutes to an hour. Because of how much I've had it rise already, I'm probably just gonna do 30 minutes. So it's just gonna sit there for 30 minutes and then I'll come back and do the rest. All right, so we let our dough sit for about 30 minutes. So I am gonna, we're gonna put it in the oven. So the first thing we're gonna do, right now we're gonna do what's called the scoring process. So you're gonna flip your dough back over. So this is what it looks like, beautiful. And then you have a scorer. It's just a blade, and it's just gonna cut your bread. She has, in this book, she has a lot of great ways you can score. So I just like to do a 4 score. So what this does is this allows the bread to grow. So I'm gonna score it like that. So you see, makes a beautiful shape. And then, excuse Theo. And then we're gonna put the bread on some parchment paper. I like to cut my parchment paper in a 4 here. And then we're gonna pop it right into our cast iron Dutch oven. We're gonna put it in the oven and we're gonna bake it for 20 minutes, and then we're gonna take the lid off and we're gonna bake it for another 20 minutes. So 40 total. And we'll see how the bread turns out. Well guys, here we are. Our everyday sourdough bread. Take it out of the pan. Oh, look at that beauty. And there it is. Beautiful. A little dark on the bottom, but good overall. So I usually let that sit until it's like room temperature, and then cut into it. And that's all, friends.